Criticism, correction, and rejection are things that everyone has to deal with, and it's not the easiest to give or receive. Considering I have plans to make more videos on those topics, especially after recent events with the channel Music Matters, I wanted to make this video first, talking about different types of criticism and what we can do to improve, using my year of teaching college courses as an example, as well as comments here on YouTube. I want this video to serve as an example for me as well to help me remember how to write my scripts better going forward, and of course for you to help improve yourself. Course evaluations are a great tool to help teachers improve their courses, and was something I looked forward to when I taught a college course for a year. When I got my first set of evaluations, I saw why many colleagues don't like teaching freshman courses. While some of the comments were valuable, others honestly were not. With a few years removed from teaching that course, I reached out to some students and wanted to see if they had any thoughts to share after having been in college for a few years. While many agreed, only one actually sent me anything. Oh well, I'll work with what I was given and provide my own thoughts on my teaching as well, as there are many areas for improvement. First, let's start with common criticisms that aren't the greatest before I talk about good criticisms. The biggest point we need to remember when providing feedback, simple phrases like, "This is a bad teacher," "I hated this course," and "he was not helpful at all." Those actually don't really serve a purpose. It's valuable to know that the teaching wasn't the most effective, but what's missing is the why. Why was this person a bad teacher? Why did you hate the course, and why were they not helpful? On YouTube, comments like, "Bad video, you're wrong," or etc. Well, those would fall into the same category. I actually did receive a comment that told me to go back to music theory class because I don't know what I'm talking about. And after providing examples and proof to my argument, this person never responded again. This is why I provide probably more examples than what is really necessary, because I want to show that what I'm doing is not just making something up for only a few potential examples. Other typical comments lack context. One comment I received was that I never stayed after class to help. This commenter, who I'm 90% certain I know who it was, did not look at my side of the equation and again misses the why. I taught an 8 a.m. and a 9:30 a.m. class, both in the same room. Most days I was in the room by 7:30 and didn't leave until 10:20. So this gives students 30 minutes before the 8 a.m. class, and since that class ends at 8:50, I was free from 8:50 until 9:30. After the second class, I had lessons to teach at 10:30 in a different room, so I had to leave and get ready to teach there. So could I stay after that second class to help? No. So this criticism is missing the context, and they didn't look at the reasoning for why I couldn't, and instead said I was just not willing to stay after. Furthermore, I was always available to stay after my lessons, and I always encourage my students to email me if they have any questions or want to schedule a time to meet with me, either in person or over a call. Proof that I'm not making this up is in the recent comment that I received that supports my notion that I offered extra help. So now I ask you, was I not willing to stay after class to help the students? Another funny comment I received was, since this class was easy for him in college, he thinks it will be easy for everyone, which is not true at all and made in for a poor teacher. This comment actually tries to show an example of something specific to show their argument, but words were twisted. As a side note, it appears I might have done this to Music Matters, but more about that in my next video. While this comment shows something specific for their argument, their example is lacking something. Context, per usual. The actual quote was something like this: "When I was in college, this course was one of the easier ones for me, which means I won't fully know or understand some of the struggles you might be facing, so I will need you to let me know so I can gear my teaching better." Of course, there's definitely a better way of saying that, but given the full quote, does this imply that I think the class will be easy for everyone? Not at all. One more funny common criticism I received: he expects you to learn the material outside of class on your own. It makes me wonder if they criticize all their teachers for assigning homework, or more applicable if they said that the same thing about their private lesson teachers that required them to practice their instruments outside of lessons. The class I was teaching was aural skills, or aural training. The whole point of the class is to learn how to sight sing rhythms and melodies. The only way to get good at it is to practice, which I did not spend a lot of class time on and instead focused more on different concepts. But there are some legitimate criticisms to my teaching that contribute to this as well, but I'll get to those more in a minute. And this comment on my Dark Souls response video makes me wonder if this is a type of go-to response for someone who just doesn't like a certain aspect of your video and wants to give you something negative. I really don't know. But they claim that I take Austin out of context and that I don't give any concrete evidence. But that's exactly what they did in their comment. So how is this comment useful? Nothing to support how my arguments are weak and no examples of me taking Austin out of context. The most that they have going for them is that I didn't give any concrete evidence. That would be fine if I provided nothing, but I did. Here's a comment that I find kind of weird, and I realize I might be lacking context myself, but I received this comment. It's in Spanish, but I'm not fluent in Spanish and my video wasn't in Spanish. So why is somebody commenting on my video that it's, quote, bullshit and not what they expected in a language different than the content they're commenting on? This is also confusing to me that the video was not what they expected, so I genuinely want to know what I was missing in my script that signified that I was going to talk about the music accuracy in the episode. Perhaps my wording made it seem like I was only going to talk about the orally heard music over the factual and historical accuracy of the orchestral elements? Do you know?
As a full-time musician, I thought I'd take a look at the accuracy of the episode. I won't go through the episode scene by scene, but just taking a look at dimensions of the music.
Comments like, who cares, or there's 8 minutes of my life I'm not getting back, are also weird to me. If you don't care, then why bother watching the video? Or more so, why comment? The easy answer is that I care about the accuracy and want to praise when it's done right, but also show the general audience that may not know what the differences are and what would be true in the real world. The channel Tantacruel recently uploaded a video that talks about music elitism, and I think it's relevant here. Classical music is portrayed in a certain way to the public eye that is honestly not really true. So videos like these inform about the accuracy of what is actually true. So who cares? Well, many people do. Personally, I don't care for channels that do like makeup tutorials, but I'm not seeking them out and commenting who cares because there's clearly an audience for it. Here's a comment that works for the most part, but we hit a different issue. One that I know I struggle with. Wording statements in certain ways can imply a certain tone. For this one, I felt attacked, and my response was more defensive. In the end, this person admitted that they were wrong and misunderstood my video. But I also responded in a more defensive and aggressive tone. So both of us have something to learn from this, but we both did seemingly calm down later in the comments. How about a really solid criticism comment? I actually really like this one, as it clearly shows that there is a disagreement about something, what exactly that something is, and why it doesn't work for them. This is perfect. I took this comment seriously and don't have music that high in the mix anymore. So I actually do like constructive criticism, even if we disagree, and there are plenty of things to say in regards to my videos and teaching. So let's take a look at my different approaches to teaching oral skills and see why they were or weren't the most effective. First, let's set the scene on how I was hired, as this gives some context. The school needed a teacher last minute, and I was hired 1 week before classes began and had a meeting with another professor on Thursday, and classes started Tuesday the following week. In this time, I needed to learn a new counting system, like 1-ienda or 1-tita, construct a syllabus, and decide how I was going to approach teaching the class. I have never taught a class before, so here I go into the deep end. With all that being said, do I think I was the most effective teacher? No. And I knew going in that it was going to be rough to get started, but I did my best. But let's talk about some shortcomings and pay attention to how I approach these criticisms. There will need to be 3 elements to look for: the problem, why it's a problem, and a potential solution. See if you could spot those for each of the different topics. Since this course started things out from the beginning band level rhythms and counting, the students appeared to grasp it incredibly fast. But this is where I noticed the traditional way of teaching rhythms is wrong, at least in my opinion. That's the source to my problems with time signature video. So from there, I pivoted and tried to teach the quote right way, or at least what I thought would be the right way. Anyone who has taught before can already see the train wreck that is to come, and I basically improv'd a new way to teach a concept of rhythms which went against the way I was taught and against the way the students were used to. Needless to say, this led to some confusion for the students, and I'm sure it led to some contradictory statements from me at some point. What I should have done was stick to the traditional way of teaching rhythm and sat on the idea to improve the way we teach rhythm until later. And yes, I have a video in the works for how to teach rhythm and time signatures coming. Intervals. I actually never received any comments about this section of the course since I stuck to the traditional way of teaching, but I do have my own comments about the intervals, and yes, there is a video in the works. One aspect of the course was dictations, or writing down melodies that we hear. This was part of my classes in college, but were structured a little bit differently in this course that I was teaching, so I had an issue on how to approach it effectively. Furthermore, I made a choice to try to be more modern and use contemporary examples. So instead of just using the typical ABC song or Mary Had a Little Lamb, I had them transcribe music like Jurassic Park or Gears of War. I did my best to find examples that would fit their skill set at the time. The issues came into where I did not explain well enough and work with the students on how to figure out where do is, or the tonic or home bass pitch, and provide tips on how to be able to work it out faster. I showed one example, the Smash Ultimate theme, where I went through different steps, and that was the one example I did, and nothing to reinforce those ideas. The solution here would have been to systematically approach the different concepts and do each aspect individually many times to make sure that it's locked in before combining them together. Singing. Another topic I didn't receive much feedback on outside of the general stuff, but there are some points to address here. First is the idea of solfege. It can take a while before you're comfortable with not only singing the right solfege syllable, but to do the hand signal at the same time. And here's where I tried to find a happy medium with the students and eventually gave them a choice. Traditional teachings typically have the students sign the solfege as they are singing, as well as tap out the beat with their other hand. Yeah, we are requiring students to do 4 things at once. Translate a written music into a new, basically foreign language, sign this foreign language with the potential of needing to move their hands up or down with the contour of the music, sing the correct note and syllable, and tap the beat. That's a lot of tasks to just throw on students. And yes, I had my students do this, and that's a problem. A better approach is to take one element at a time, like before, and not require all of them at the same time. On top of that, the reasoning behind each element, while I know I explained it, I never reinforced the ideas, so the thought of, what's the point of this, definitely cropped up. Also, when you look at the reasoning behind learning intervals and solfege, you might see an issue, but if not, that's okay. I'll cover it in a future video. The final section to talk about is testing. Here's where another odd comment comes into play. Nothing done in class prepares you for the tests. Well, this is easily disproven by showing all the fundamentals that I went through, from solfege to daily exercises that we did. There are of course some issues here as shown already, but a big point to remember is that the goal of the class is to prepare you to be able to sight sing a melody, meaning you've never seen it before. On my tests, I typically gave 1 to 2 prepared examples, usually taking a page from their book, and I asked them to prepare it, and then one new melody, something they hadn't seen before that I just made up myself. The style of the test was done pretty similar to how I've seen it, and the real issue from my side as the instructor comes from the preparation for the test and how I cover everything else. The comment that nothing done in class helped is an over-exaggeration, and would have been more helpful to pinpoint what was missing that would have helped better. With comments like these, I tried to think about how effective it would be if my private instructors taught that way. I played down a concerto and the comments I get were, sounded bad, needs more work, nothing you practiced prepared you to play for me today. Those aren't really useful, right? I do want to note that the majority of the criticism of my teaching was from my own reflection. There was some guidance from the students' comments, of course, but identifying the issues was something I figured out. I point this out to show you how in-depth I try to look into topics before I post here on the channel, and how I try to cover all angles if possible. In the end, remember, we are all human, we all make mistakes, and when giving criticism, make sure you're specific on what the issue is, why it's problematic, and what can be done to fix it. If you do all of that in a polite way, of course, or at least not in an accusatory or aggressive way, you're off to a good start on constructive criticism. With all that said, it's time to make another video on music matters, and perhaps I'll tackle two-step violin too. Until then.